Hey, what's up, everybody? We are deep into day 2 on the gate project. My name is Paul Michael. Let's challenge the build. Alright, so what I decided to do for the slide mechanism for the gate is an overall, let's just say 26 feet long. And I wanted to have it slide open and close across the driveway. So in order to do that, I need to come up with some kind of rail or track system for it to slide on, parallel and level to the opening and the ground. So what I have come up with is we are going to use the same 2x2 14 gauge square tubing, and what I've decided to do is cut my own track system. So it took some time to do it today. You'll see some footage of me doing the cutting, but what essentially I did is I cut the center of the tube out so that way we can slide it into or over top of a piece of 1 3/4 14 gauge square tubing. So it's essentially like a trailer hitch receiver where this will slide in. So ultimately I'm making a receiver and a slide mechanism. The 1 3/4 square tubing will get mounted to my fence posts as a track, and the reason I cut the slit out in it is so that way the bracket can still be welded to the 1 3/4 square tubing and get mounted to the fence. So the 2x2 14 gauge will get welded to the fence. As you can see here, I have some 2x2 kind of laid out along the rail. The rail, it goes the full length of the fence, and I'm going to make a 2-rail system, so there'll be a top rail and a bottom rail. As I continue building the fence, you'll see how my system is going to work. And then just by dumb luck today, I was like, wow, it's going to be really heavy. I'm going to need some rollers to implement. And I was looking at an old skateboard my kids had laying around, and I was able to salvage a skateboard wheel from the board and grind it down and turn it down into a wheel that will fit inside the 2x2 14 gauge. So there's a lot going on in my head. I have a hard time getting it out on paper. I'm trying my best to explain it to you guys, but as I continue building, I think you'll see it come together and make sense. And that is why you always have to try to remain as safe as possible. You need to understand that these angle grinders are extremely dangerous. Jeans, boots, gloves, shield at all times. So what happened was, when I was cutting this, there's so much tension when it's manufactured that as soon as I cut open the last little bit of steel, it sprung and then pinched the wheel and threw it forward. And then as a result, you saw what happened. But I am okay. Had a nice little safety moment. I can tell you that this wheel is going on the wall as a reminder to be safe. I haven't had anything like that happen in a really, really long time. So anytime that you're using one, try to use it in the most safest environment possible. And even that can be difficult with the jobs that you're doing. So you as viewers need to know that the work that's done in the garage and around the garage can be very dangerous. But with that, I got work to do. Perfect, 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 perfect. So the way that I came about cutting the channel out of the square tubing is I have a piece of 1.25" angle that I'm using as a guide, and all I did was put the 1.25" angle on there square and run my marker down on one side, and then I flip it around, and on some of the pieces it actually fell right on the weld seam burn, so it was kind of easy to follow the guide. But put it on both sides, draw a line down both sides, and then proceeded to cut out the center piece. So it was a total of 52 feet that I had to cut. I don't have a plasma cutter. I don't have any nifty tool to cut out the center. So it was a lot of cutting. And essentially the pieces wind up looking like this. Perfect, 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 All right, so I got all the channel system welded up and ground down smooth. I want to fill you guys in on a few mistakes I made and also a change that I had to make in my channel system. As far as the mistake I made, I'm going to flop the camera around and I'll show you. I switched it up from 1.75" 14 gauge to 1.5" eighth wall. And the reason being is, as I was designing and playing with the slide mechanism, I realized that the 1.75" was going to be too big. The tolerance was too tight for the sliding mechanism. As I was welding it, it kind of changed the inside diameter a little bit with the weld slag. So due to that, it wasn't sliding as nicely as it was. So I think what I'm going to do is implement more of the roller design with the skateboard wheels. As far as the mistake, like I said, when I was cutting the slide rails for the fence, I cut them at the same length as the fence. So a total of like 314 inches in total length. And what I realized is after I cut them, due to the fact that it's going to be a sliding gate, you need to have a little bit of overhang on the rail system. So I took one of the cutoffs and I added a cutoff to each end, just so that way the gate slides will always be in the channel system that I make. I realized after I made it and cleaned them up and welded it, I realized that it was too short, so I had to cut it and piece it back in. I put the piece closer to the, I guess, closed side of the fence where the latch mechanism is going to go. So the next step I'm going to do is set up the channels on the fence and actually weld the slide channels to the top and the bottom of the fence. So it's important when you're setting the slide rail in place that you take your time. You measure the distance between the fence and the slide mechanism, so that way it stays parallel to the fence. And then also you want to take your time and put a square on it to make sure it's square to the fence as well. So starting at the front or the back, set it in place and then work your way down the fence or whatever it is that you're building. In this case, I started at the front. I set the front and then came down to every upright that was in the fence and measured and then squared it and then put a tack weld. So it's important that you work in small sections all the way down, whatever it is that you're building, especially when you're doing like a rail system. Put a couple tack welds in, make sure it's true and square. And then once you get them all in and tack welded, then you can go back in and then fully weld the rail in permanently.
Perfect.
All right, so that wraps up day 2 on our gate build. I got the top and bottom rails welded in. For the next video, we're gonna start focusing on the actual slide mechanism for the fence. In the meantime, give me a thumbs up if you like this content. Drop me a comment down below. As always, remember, challenge to build. My name is Paul Michael. I'll catch you in the next video.